the advent of AI, the proliferation of the very same, or the proliferation of the very same, excuse me, there are people whom are struggling to understand where we go from here. And there are those whom say that they understand the problem very vividly. And they are attempting to dispense advice to others as to how to deal with a phenomenon that comes around with the changes in human behavior, with the adaptation to all of these things. And recently, Christianity Today decided to do a deep dive into how men and women, both supposedly, we'll get more into that shortly, that's an important caveat, are looking to AI to have romantic partners, and none other than Russell Moore, Mike Cosper, and a guy by the last name of Rickabaugh, who's a supposed philosopher, explained to us through a recent podcast episode and article how Christians should engage with AI. The problem is that when one listens to their advice, one finds that there's an awful lot of mealy-mouthed tiptoeing on the subject, and they in fact don't give any advice whatsoever as to how to even engage with this, or if we should even engage with the matter, which we're going to take up that void because, as all of you know, we've explained it before, nature hates a void. And when there is a void, something will fill it. Typically, when there's a void in these sorts of things, when the church doesn't fill it properly with sound advice, secularists and others whom say that they are inspired by Christian doctrine will fill that void with erroneous ideas that only proliferates the evil. So we're not only going to criticize these buffoons, yes, they are buffoons, over what they say, but we're going to give, as it were, our take on how Christians should interact, if they should interact, how they should interact with these sorts of things. Because, folks, it's here. Irrespective of whether or not you wish this to have never happened, the phenomenon of people looking to the digital technologies, the emerging digital technologies, is here. And you as a Christian have to have wisdom, discernment, and how to deal with it in an effective way. Otherwise, it can also swallow you whole and your family as well. Welcome each and every one of you to this new edition of Irrespective. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time, my name is Gio. It will always be Gio. The name will never change. And to my side, to my right hand, is my father and co-host, whose name hasn't changed since he was born.
But it will be changing from week to week now.
Oh, you will be changing.
Yes, absolutely. It
Why is that?
On how much trouble I get.
Got it. My co-host, Jesus.
Good morning, friends. Have you noticed that it's the same trend, whether it's a religious program or a secular program, that they continuously bring back the same people as experts of everything? I see it in the news circles. I see it in the talk show circles, and I see it in the Christian world, if I am allowed to phrase it that way, in Christendom, over and over and over again. For example, Russell Moore is on as an expert on many things. And then when I listen to him, it turns out that what makes him an expert on just about anything, because they bring him on for any and all topics, is that he talks to people. Yes, he talks to people. So there could be a program on roofing, and they'll say, and today our guest on roofing is Russell Moore. Russell, can you explain to us what is going on with the roofing industry? I have talked to many roofers. Furthermore, I have been talking to people that have been feeling like the roofs of their mouths are not quite the way they should be. The texture there,
Right,
is not really all there, and they have issues with the roof of their mouth. And I have also seen cat on a hot tin roof and fiddler's roof. Therefore, I can talk on any and all things roof. Or another program, we are going to have a program on constipation. And our special guest for this program on constipation
will be Russell Moore.
Russell Moore. And Russell, could you let us know what is going on with constipation? I have spoken to a lot of constipated people. Now, if you guys don't know it, I know it, but this is the way it goes down. There is a physical constipation, which means you can't push through the food that you ate. And then there is a mental constipation, folks. That means that you cannot understand nor push through the information that you are receiving. And furthermore, and then they bring in a Bible verse out of nowhere. Some of the stuff is actually made up to make it seem like this is the way that Christians should be talking about this. This is the way they should be understanding this.
There's a lot of that in this interaction.
Absolutely, because they criticize the people that use the chatbot or chatbots. Fine, I get it. But they don't seem to understand that they are a form of chatbots themselves. They basically do not discourage you from going to them. Instead of encouraging you to go to God, go to the Bible, they really are saying, without using the words, come to us. So anyway, going back to my explanation here, we have this expert because he talks to people on constipation. And then they'll bring up something that, this is made up. I have read the original manuscripts. You haven't read it, Gio, but this guy has, where Jesus delivered a man from constipation.
Right.
He said, the Lord said, be thou delivered from constipation. And he pooped on his pants. Well, it wasn't really pants back there at the moment.
At the moment.
And then he was able to speak eloquently about his deliverance. And so I see these cats showing up over and over and over again to talk about any and all things. And most importantly for us, this is the way you Christians should be looking at this. So repeat after me. And they don't say it this way, but that's basically
exactly what they say.
What they're saying.
This is what we're going to use as a source material for today's live stream. It's an article that was published on Christianity Today, that rag. And we've told people, be very careful when you read these things. Just like Dad was explaining just 2 seconds ago, you have these persons who will use gospelese or Christianese, as has been commonly known in discernment circles, to give the impression that they're actually giving you solid biblical advice, when in fact it's language that couches the evil that they are attempting to promote. Christianity Today is no different. Remember that, just to give you a short backdrop on who we're talking about here. Russell Moore is a former Democratic congressman staffer. The guy's been associated with George Soros. Some will say not directly, but he has been part of organizations that receive money from George Soros, like the Evangelical Immigration Table. The things that he has promoted are definitely leftist causes. He was hired as the editor-in-chief of Christianity Today, although recently, if I'm not mistaken, in September of this year, he stepped down from that role. Someone else assumed it, but he is still obviously part of the magazine. And in an article titled "ChatGPT Announces New Erotica Feature," the subtitle, "The Bulletin with Brandon Rickabaugh," this is the guy that obviously hosts this particular podcast in which three men appear, how ChatGPT's new turn offers opportunities for the gospel. So it seems as if they're going to give you, dear Christian, a biblical angle on all of this so that you can know how to interact, or if not, with this sort of thing. According to the article, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, recently announced that ChatGPT will roll out a new erotica feature next month, part of an adaptation that will loosen restrictions and, quote, treat adult users like adults, end quote. The bulletin sat down with Russell Moore, Mike Cosper, and Brandon Rickabaugh, public philosopher and founder and CEO of the Novus Initiative, nice name there, to discuss AI chatbot companions, the illusion of online intimacy, and the call of Jesus in a world of rapidly changing technology. Now, what we have here are excerpts. We're not going to go through the entirety of the podcast episode. There's certain things that we've picked out of the article that stand out to us because it serves as the basis for what they are analyzing, or how they're analyzing the whole thing, and how wrong it is. Some of you might be asking, how does this affect me? First and foremost, if you listen to these people, the reason we are selecting these excerpts, it's because the basis under which they are giving you their so-called advice is not only inherently flawed, in some instances, it's actually downright evil. A second point with all of this is that the basis of what they're using to give you so-called their Christian advice actually leaves the Christian at a disadvantage, because it leaves them knowing less about the topic, if that is even possible, but it is possible, knowing less about the topic than more, so that they can make a better informed decision as to how to interact, if to interact, the discernment aspect of this with this sort of so-called emerging technology.
But it goes back to my point. I've been talking to people. We've been talking to people. Oh, so we should listen to you because you've been talking to people. You've been listening to people. I can do the same thing. I can read books. What makes you an expert? Furthermore, and I said it before and I will say it again, why should I be going to you? Why are you encouraging me or not discouraging me from going to you, just like you are discouraging me from using these bots. Why don't you encourage me to go to the Bible to pray about these things? No, they actually will not do that because they don't want to get what demonetized you.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, here we go. Here are the excerpts that we are going to pick out from the article, which again is based off of the podcast episode. Brandon Rickabaugh says AI companions constitute a host of potential relationships. You see, from there, you've already got a problem. The way that you describe that as a potential relationship, that language to me legitimizes this thing in the first place. Face it, folks. And they themselves recognize this, which is so troublesome and contradictory to his first statement here. And this is a guy who says that he's a public philosopher. Why would you call interaction with something that is fake, with something that by its word, it gives it away, is artificial, as a so-called potential relationship? Now, Rickabaugh and others say that they'll use that sort of language to be able to soften the discourse and make people more malleable and accepting to what they have to say. Here's the problem. Once you lead off with that sort of language, in the listener's mind, you're already legitimizing the very thing which you're going to criticize. So it's an inherent contradiction. Second point.
Plus, in the interview, they say pastors can't really tackle these things from the pulpit because then the congregation goes, dark. You shouldn't be dealing with this. But they can deal with it.
They can deal with it, though.
So it's wrong, and let me say it right off the bat, for pastors not to be able to tackle issues. You should be able to tackle any and all issues that affect your congregants. Very simple. Don't let these people say pastor can't really tackle these issues because then the people get uncomfortable with it. Tackle the issue. If the congregation gets uncomfortable with it, that's their problem, not your problem.
The church is supposed to be the pillar and ground of truth. The congregants are not supposed to be telling the pastor what he can and cannot say.
Plus, the way that they moved this immediately into relationships, when we're talking about erotica,
right,
a provocation of sexual arousal.
Yes.
You can't just dismiss that because this is the target and then move it into this wide spectrum of relationships.
Well said. This is the context. That way, some of you will say, but what's the context of wherein he uses the phrase potential relationships? Take a listen to this. It makes it even more ridiculous when you think about it. These bots could purchase things for you on Amazon or do work for you. It's not a relationship. Again, it's a digital medium that has nothing to do with relationships. Mental health bots, but notice how they legitimize this moving away from physical relationships, right, to something that can be done with a so-called digital medium. It's the legitimizing of it. So the language is very important. Mental health bots have been around for a long time, predating ChatGPT. You also have companion bots that are trained to behave like a close friend, romantic partner, or spouse. Now you've got companion bots that can serve the purpose of erotica too. Most of the research about these companions piggybacks off the psychology and sociology of pornography use. Psychology models.
That is so important.
That's true. Granted. Psychology models also predict the kinds of behaviors people have with these chatbots. Now, the thing is, some of you might say, but I've never heard that before. Folks, they've been using this modeling in Las Vegas for the longest time. Social media companies have been using this modeling for the longest time. Advertising agencies have been using this sort of modeling for the longest time. They call it hacking the human brain. That's one of the phrases that they use in their conferences and in their meeting rooms and in their boardrooms. It happens all the time. When people use these, they anthropomorphize. They attribute human-like properties like mind, consciousness, and agency to these bots. Granted, he's right on that. Elon Musk's Super Grok subscribers can pay $30 a month to access AI companions that offer erotic content. It is accurate to compare this to a drug dealer. Is it accurate to compare this to drug dealing, selling something we know is going to make you an emotional addict and is dangerous for your health? This is Russell Moore now.
When I said this is important, what I meant, Gio, because I want to be very precise with this information that we're sharing with people, I'm talking about the participation of psychology in the evil that is being distributed, and how it lends itself to these levels of evil. It's very important because I personally, and Gio also, we've been denouncing psychology and its many uses, and it's not, oh, this is so helpful and this is so friendly. There's a lot of evil behind the use of psychology. A lot of it. And you just heard an explanation of how it's involved behind the scenes in the erotica movement as it pertains to chatbots.
But you'll notice, although he gives you a proper understanding of the type of behavior that they use to manipulate human behavior, this thing starts descending into a little chaos here. Russell Moore answers. Yes, a recent report in Harper's Magazine spoke of freebasing pornography, like heating and smoking a drug so the high is particularly intense. AI companions possess all of the problems of digital pornography, plus an illusion of emotional connection. God's design is sexuality in the context of relationship. I've already got a problem here. Russell Moore is an excellent non how shall I or he's an excellent ambiguity artist. Let me put it to you that way. Because in the context of relationship, what does that even mean? God's design in sexuality is sexuality in the context of relationship. So I guess two people can fornicate and say, hey, we're not sinning because guess what? It's in the context of relationship. We've had a long relationship. Homosexuals can go ahead and do this. This is the sort of stuff, the language that Russell Moore uses that gives an allowance for free interpretation, shall we say, the interpretation on biblical ethics that extends to all sort of sinful activity. This is the sort of stuff that he does. God's design is sexuality in the context of relationship and relationship in the context of covenant. Gio, but he covers marriage there. Notice that he's not being very specific about marriage between one man and one woman. He's doing this intentionally. This is the way he operates. And covenant in the context of God. Now you have the illusion of relationship and sexuality without covenant, without genuine reality at all. So what he, by his own admission, is saying that he's extending that consideration to homosexuals, to heterosexuals, bisexuals, et cetera, et
There
cetera.
are homosexuals who say that their marriage, they call it a marriage, is endorsed, approved by God.
If I'm wrong on what I'm saying about this, listen then to what he says next. I talk with pastors. There he is again, talking to people. I talk with pastors dealing with men who say, I've fallen in love with a chatbot. She understands me better than my wife does. This algorithmic tech, where's the denunciation for the women that are using this? Oh, remember, according to Moore, his acolytes, his followers, his disciples, the problem nowadays is men and men exclusively, not feminism, men. Which, by the way, this begs the question.
Does he talk to Hispanic men and black men or just white men?
White men. This begs the question, folks. Why is it that women are complaining about this if they themselves, through feminism, have talked about women's liberation? And women themselves are part of the group of people who are creating these AIs, or they themselves are using themselves through OnlyFans and things of that nature to put out content which objectifies them and sexualizes them. Now these very same women whom call that women's liberation are saying, you men are the pigs because you continue to objectify us. You can't have it both ways. Additionally, feminism has led to an attitude, a general attitude in Western women where, frankly, they are insufferable. And a lot of men are tired, as it were, of that relationship. So they say, you know what? I'd rather go with the AI chatbot because it's not going to give me the headache that I have to deal with these women. So instead of having some self-reflection, and women, feminists more in particular, or people who have adopted feminism, instead of saying, you know, I have to fix my attitude, I need to make myself more presentable, I need to make myself, as it were, more relationship worthy, as it were. No, the problem is men. And now Moore is using that paradigm to criticize men, but not the women that also, using the drug dealer analogy, as it were, that was used earlier, when they themselves are creating this content that objectifies women, they themselves feed into this really, really bad system, but it's only the men who are
so
the
the
problem.
psychology that puts together the algorithm for these female chatbots creates what? The kind of women the men would enjoy having around. And so you see the maliciousness behind all of this. I said it before and I will say it once again. Psychology is playing a role in all of these things. First of all, damning practically all men and then defending women. But then they go on and create the algorithms that create for men a vice, because this is a vice. This is going to be a moneymaker.
Yep.
It already is in some circles. It costs $30 a month, and the article covers that. That men will go to over and over again. That'll be a stronger vice because he compared it to freebasing.
Yes.
Than your regular porn film or porn magazines. This will be a deeper vice, a stronger hold on men. Why? Because on these bots, Gio, the women that show up there for these men are what men are desiring.
Yeah.
And women are saying, in no way shall I be like this.
Yep.
So it's a problem that it's snowballing, and there will be no fix for this.
To your point, this algorithmic technology is specifically designed to reflect back to that person what he expects from a partner or a relationship. When you add sexual content to that longing for connection, that is really a dangerous combination. We haven't even figured out how to deal with the old school porn problem in our churches, much less this. Folks, this is an outright lie.
But they've had time to deal with the old school porn.
The thing is that people like Russell Moore and others don't want to deal with it because it's a hot button issue.
Or maybe they haven't been talking to enough people about this. Because that's what
correct.
makes them experts. We talk to a lot of people about this.
Rigobah also answers when we say that they understand, air quotations, that is anthropomorphizing. The truth is that chatbots have no understanding. There's no sentience behind them at all. I encourage computer scientists to use non-anthropomorphic language in their models and also their interface, but it sneaks in. Folks, we've said this before.
Sneaks in?
It sneaks in somehow, right? So it doesn't have sentience, but
It's
somehow
not
has
intentionally
sentience.
placed in there. It sneaks in.
This is, you see what I'm saying? I said it earlier. They give you these so-called answers thinking here's the solution, when in fact it's not. Folks, he just said a minute ago, they designed this intentionally to hook you. But now he says, well, not really. They're not necessarily using that language. Which is it? Is it one or is it the other? We cannot talk about chatbots knowing or feeling things because there is no sentience in them. Well, the moderator says that's helpful, Brandon, because what Russell's describing is this person's perception of connection. It seems very deceitful that someone perceives an understanding when it's not really there. There's some other things Mike Cosper talks about, but I want to get to another point of this interaction because this is important for us to address. We often hear the church needs to step up and provide community for lonely people. While certainly that's a part of what is needed here, does the church have larger work when it comes to relationship, companionship AI? I need to pause. The base of that question presumes that the church owes certain things to certain people to fill voids in their lives. Some of you might even be surprised that I'm saying that, being that the version of Christianity that you have been taught for years is you as a Christian participating in a larger institution known as the church have this obligation. That's the term that they'll use, obligation to reach out and touch people's lives. They'll use those nebulous phrases that sound so nice, but it really doesn't mean anything. You need to reach out and touch people because that is part of the Christian ethic. Well, let me ask you a question. For years, for decades, the church in the United States and in the West has been doing youth ministry, little children's ministry, singles ministry, missions ministry, missions to the local community ministry, if we can call it that. So on, feeding the poor. That's a big one. Feeding the poor. Church planting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
The formation or regeneration of new apostles.
What has that gotten us? What has that gotten the church in the United States more specifically? It's a context that we are in. Number one, our children, and by our children, I'm not talking about collectively, as if they belong to all of us. I mean the children of Christian parents. The statistics continue to show that those children just do not last in the faith because they've been ignored because we're so worried about missions and other things. But our own children, guess what? They disappear from the faith.
Well, they turn them over to Sunday school instead of the parents saying, wait, the Sunday school at best is a supplement. I need to take care of the important things in life, including rearing my children in the admonition of the Lord. They know that the Sunday school takes care of that.
But this is my point.
And then you go to Sunday school and like one lady told me, you don't have enough videos here, enough video games. So we were inclined to use whatever little time we had with the kids to teach them the Word of God, and she wanted video games.
Here's the thing. That way the answer doesn't get long-winded and we don't get away from the topic. The question presumes that even in this issue, the church has an obligation in some way, shape, or form to, as it were, not tell these people the truth so that they can do their own diligence as Christians, as they should do, which is their responsibility, to deal with these things with discernment. No, the presumption is the church has to do the work for the Christians. You see, there's a subtle difference, but that difference is all the difference in the world that is needed, because I don't ever find this idea in Scripture that says the church has to do for Christians what Christians should be doing for themselves.
Can I make a connection between affordability and provision?
Sure.
I've heard over and over now, talking to people, that affordability is the key to Mondami's victory.
You're the people talker to.
Absolutely. And they insist that the 2026 midterm elections will have to do with affordability, and the 2028 presidential elections will have to do with affordability. I connect affordability to provisions being provided for. How? Well, if you listen to the word affordability, you think that's a new thing. It's a new term. It's something that the liberals are using now. Really? What do we hear in the Miranda rights?
Supposedly.
You have a right to an
Right.
attorney.
Right. You have
If
a
you
right to remain
can't-
silent.
If you can't afford one,
One will be provided.
provided. So you start seeing a connection between affordability. If I can't afford it, it has to be provided. And the church has not only taken a bite out of this, it's chewing it and digesting it and spewing it out. One more. I don't want to make this long winded like you said, Gio. What do we really call Obamacare?
It's government controlled.
The Affordable Care
Yeah.
Act.
Yeah.
And
It's euphemisms.
but again, look
Right.
at the words that are being used to put information in us.
Right.
The Affordable Care Act. And what does it do? It takes money from a certain group of people so that others don't really have to pay what they should be paying, the equal amount of insurance
Yeah.
that they have to pay or
Even
should
though
be paying.
we continually hear, just to your example, people are saying they can't even afford Obamacare anymore after all. Which that was always the purpose of Obamacare.
But you see the connection.
right.
Now, here come the Christians. And instead of sticking to the biblical model, what is the biblical model? There's a verse in the Bible that is so strong that people absolutely hate it. Paul writes to Timothy and he says, if a person doesn't provide for his or her own, especially his or her household, he has denied the faith.
Correct.
And is worse than an infidel.
An infidel. Correct.
And then Paul goes on to say,
You know what it is that you're worse than a sinner?
but how can you omit that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Bible says that the poor are there and we should help them. Jesus said the poor will always be with us.
Correct.
And here's the point. I'm not saying not to help people. I'm saying you can't legalize it. You can't make it a legal issue, a law. It has to be something born out of my heart, out of the goodness of the heart, if there is any there. You can't codify it. You can't turn it into law where I impose this on you. But then you see, and the church has participated, Gio, how affordability and providing for have become one and the same thing. You use these two terms interchangeably. And next thing you know, the church has, as you were saying, the obligation of rearing up the kids.
Yeah.
Making sure you find a helpmate.
Right.
Making sure that your needs are met.
Making sure you're not lonely.
If you don't have enough for the electricity, we have to take care of that. I've heard preachers saying that there should be no welfare department because the church has the obligation to be the welfare department of the world. I don't find that in the Bible. Again,
Catholics
I'll go back.
believe that, by the way.
I'll go back to
A lot
the
of
biblical model. If a believer does not provide for his own, he has denied the faith. Listen to that one. It's a difficult one. And he or she has become worse than an infidel.
I'll give Russell Moore a little credit here because his answer is, in a sense, correct, but nevertheless, he reverts back to what we were just talking about. The church needs to recognize this in a way that doesn't treat it as a freakish science fiction-y and weird. Otherwise, people don't want to talk about it. Also, it's awkward to talk about sexual and relational temptation in anything but abstract terms. A pastor who stands up and talks about erotic chatbots will have people coming up after and saying, why did you bring that up that risque?
Why?
Exactly.
Why? So he can talk about it
Right.
in a public forum, and
Right.
I can't deal with the topic with the congregation that God has put me over?
Exactly.
Are you kidding me?
Exactly. The New Testament does not have that kind of reticence about dealing with temple prostitution and other issues in the first century world. We need to acknowledge how vulnerable we all are. Technology has shaped us all in some ways we can see, in others we can't. We should not laugh at this and treat it as a futuristic thing or outlandish. This is real, this is here, this is now. But again, we're lacking details. How do we fix this? We'll get into that shortly. I wanted to get to this part because I know this is something you wanted to highlight. Rickabaugh, the public philosopher, has this to say about Jesus talking about technology. Jesus talks about technology. The Sermon on the Mount has a fundamental debate about mechanization versus non-mechanization of persons. Technology can operate beneath the surface at the level of the will, heart, emotions, and thoughts, where we treat ourselves and others as non-people. In contrast, the Sermon on the Mount makes clear that personhood matters. We are children included in God's kingdom. Jesus talks about this all over the place. You can understand that as a kind of discussion about technology if you get clear on what counts as technology.
Well, Moore chimes in. What does Moore say? The Bible speaks directly. The Bible speaks directly to issues of technology and spiritual formation. In some ways, that might not have even been understandable until now. Listen to this, Gio. Isaiah and Jeremiah talk about the man who constructs an idol, creates its mouth, creates its ears, and then expects it to speak to him and to hear him. This is technology. So you know how to whittle, you know how to shape a piece of wood into a human form.
Tech.
That is
It's
technology.
tech.
I thought he would go to, David found a way to launch 10 arrows at one time. No, technology is idolatry.
Well, to your point, the Bible does talk about how David developed wartime technology, weapons. That's true technology, not.
But the bigger point is now this guy's got you believing that his take, his insights into the Bible should be followed. You should be paying attention to him because look, Isaiah and Jeremiah were talking about technology. When we talk about technology, what are we talking about? This is from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, fifth edition, not the fourth, not the third, the fifth edition. One, the application of science. I don't see any application of science to the examples that he gave. The application of science, especially to industrial or commercial objectives. Two, the scientific method and material used to achieve a commercial or industrial objective. And three, electronic or digital products and systems considered as a group. What is he talking about? The Bible, Jeremiah and Isaiah talk about technology, and perhaps in a way that helps us understand what is going on now. He is duping the people. He is passing himself as a biblical expert on matters that he tries to splice together when he knows they don't fit.
Exactly.
And most people are going like, yeah, Moore is right. The Bible does talk about this.
The reason that we criticize people like Moore and others is because the ambiguous language gives the impression that they're actually dealing with the thing substantively and effectively at the level that they're analyzing the problem and giving a solution when in fact it's not a solution at all.
They're forcing verses into situations and conversations that don't fit.
Correct.
And most believers don't understand that what they're really saying is believers are too dumb to pick up on this.
Right. Now, here's their version of what they call the solution. And by the way, after we read this, tucked within our commentary, I'm going to give you my perspective on the matter, and I hope you'll do the same as to how to, as it were, deal with this oncoming or this emerging, they call it, technology. Stephen Adler, an AI researcher who led product safety at OpenAI, recently wrote an op-ed for the New York Times on this topic. He said, to control highly capable AI systems of the future, companies may need to slow down long enough for the world to invent new safety methods. That's not going to happen. These guys are more interested in money than anything else, right? Ones that even nefarious groups can't bypass. Talk to me about the value of slowness. That word is going to appear over and over again. Again, it sounds philosophic, it sounds deep, it sounds substantive, but in fact, it lacks the proper substance in the midst of this rapidly developing technology. More answers. We can pump the brakes in terms of cultivating slowness in our own lives, but there's no mechanism to slow down technological development when you have large multinational companies. I need to pause here. That's actually happening. What he says can't happen, and that he's discouraging people from involving themselves in the debate and in slowing this down. I was just reading a report this morning on zerohedge.com that says that all of these companies that are trying to, under the radar, go to the local commissions and build these massive data super centers are actually finding massive opposition locally by people coming together as groups. Mind you, they call it a bipartisan effort because both liberals and conservatives are finding these issues to be problematic. And they're going to the local city commissions, and their presence is so heavy that they're actually stopping the building of these data centers.
They're scared of the opposition, therefore they have to undermine the opposition with operatives like these folks here.
Right. But then you'll notice he says there is no mechanism to slow down technological development. So this guy, if you think about it, he's an infiltrator. He's telling you there's nothing you can do about it. You know, in that report that I was reading,
aren't these the same people that tell us if you don't like what I'm saying, just shut off the podcast or turn off the radio?
Right.
What do you mean there's nothing I can do?
Right.
But they're afraid to really say that out loud because if more and more and more people shut them out,
exactly,
they get demonetized.
And they become irrelevant. Here's another point. In that article, it says that to date, so many people have gathered around the issue of these data super centers that they're impeding the building of them, which I believe is a good thing, because when you inherently see the amount of electricity, the amount of water that they use, and how they offset the cost of those things to the local people, they don't absorb that cost. Google's not going to absorb that cost. Microsoft is not going to absorb that cost. They're going to pass that on to the regular public. That's the way that they are tucking in. Amazon's doing the exact same thing. People are saying, enough, I'm not going to pay for your electricity bill on this matter. I'm not going to pay for your water usage on this matter. Up to date, they've actually impeded more than $64 billion of infrastructure building for these things because it's going to come at the cost of the local residents.
But here's how they scare you. If we don't do this, China's going to do it.
That-
India's going to do it. And then you go, I guess we have to pay for this
But you-
because then the Chinese and the Indians, they will run amok with this.
But I'm glad you bring this up because what they're actually hiding is we have to do this because China's doing it. Folks, what they want to build here is basically the same thing that China's building, which is a society that is being surveilled constantly, and they want to use AI to do it. We haven't even figured out our policy or cultural standards for how to deal with the old social media companies and search engine companies, much less what's happening right now. When I talk to people, again, he continues to talk to people in Silicon Valley who are working this technology. Often they will say, if we're not doing it, China's doing it, to your point. If China's not doing it, India's doing it or something else. The language is really similar to nuclear weapons technology. This isn't great, but we have to be on top of it. That makes it difficult for any individual or even any state or nation to get a handle on this. Because of this, churches and Christians need to say, how can I cultivate slowness and spiritual formation even in the midst of all that I cannot control? Here's the problem. If more and more people adopt these ideas that they criticized earlier in the article, there's going to be less, as it were, even Christians that think in a traditional biblical way for them to actually have relationships with. So in a sense, they're pointing out the problem, but in another, they're telling you there's really nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's downright foolish. It's downright evil. Rickabaugh says we can slow down and ask, can we buy a license at ChatGPT now? You can make a strong case that Christians need to say no. There are many different applications of AI we can say no to the mental health use, to music selection in an app. I can't do anything about large-scale AI, which I just proved that you could, but I can say no to all sorts of things that are within the effective range of my will. Now, having said that, I have to give Rickabaugh some credit here because it's about time that someone says, and we've been doing this for years and we've been criticized for it, don't limit my choices. They'll say things like that. But at the end of the day, I thought the Bible, one of the things in the Christian ethic, and this is where we get to the solution aspect of all of this, I thought that Paul very clearly states that there's a principle to be had, a very simple one that even applied to this will lead you down a correct path. Give no space to the desires of the flesh. We have a guy here, Sam Altman, through his company, he knows he's going to make a lot of money through erotica by appealing to people's lust. Why don't Christians and why aren't people like others, like Moore and others, telling Christians, just say no to this, resist the devil and he will flee, etc., etc.? No, everything has to be couched in ambiguous language. Everything has to be a campaign of discouragement. You can't really fight against this in some way, shape, or form. Instead of actually pointing to the proper Christian ethic, which teaches Christians, you say no to those things because it actually harms God's design for our lives and others. Everything has to be couched in ambiguity. Otherwise, we're going to be criticized.
So the verse that I'm going to talk about has to do with idols and food that was sacrificed to idols, but the principle is there nevertheless to be used for other things. What are you talking about here? I'm talking about all things are illicit, but I will not be dominated, controlled by any.
That's it.
So what do you mean people are screaming, don't limit my choices, when the real answer should be, I decide what to do, what not to do. I have options, and one of the options is not to opt in.
Right.
And so when you understand that, and when you understand marriage, and when you understand the role of sex in humans as God designed it, it's very simple. If you want your husband to stay away from this, if you want your wife to stay away from this, here it comes. It's going to bother a few people. Then make sure you give Satan no place. Well, what are you talking about? The Bible says we should not deny ourselves to our mate. Our mate should not be saying no to us.
Yep.
What happens if there's a headache here, a headache there, and a headache there or everywhere every night? Satan steps in. How does he step in? Adultery is the oldest.
Yeah.
And then pornography came along, and now erotica, chatbots. You don't want to have this problem in your marriage, in your life, then do not deny the sexual activity that is part of God designs for marriage, and you will be pushing these things away. Yeah, but what about if within the sexual activity that a marriage has to carry on, there are things that I don't agree with? Talk about it. Talk about it with your husband. Talk about it with your wife. You don't need the minister to get involved in your conversations. Talk through these things. Pray about these things. I am sure that the Holy Spirit has more than enough answers for you and you're made about these issues, and you will be staying away from these things. You will be pushing these things away from you. And eventually, people will see, wow, this is a long lasting marriage in a place and time where people get divorced quite easily. And they will be coming around asking,
What
what's
did
the
you do?
secret?
Exactly. And this is what part of the reason that we are salt and light. We notice these things. We notice how they effectively affect, and I use that term sarcastically, effectively undermine God's design, because they find a way, to their credit, they pointed out there's a subtlety in the way that these people design these systems so as to hook people. Sure, great thing pointing it out. But suddenly when you say there's really nothing you can do about this in any way, shape, or form, and really there's not a lot of biblical ethic that we can point to in some way, which is effectively what they were saying, as it were, then it leaves Christians without answers.
But
And
they
guess
reach
what?
out to people like Moore for answers because they don't like what the Bible says. They don't like
Right.
what Paul said. What did Paul say? What are you talking about? Paul said that a woman's body does not belong to her. A married woman's body does not belong to
Can't
her.
say that.
This
Can't
is
say
my
that.
body.
Can't say that.
And the Bible says that a man's body, a husband's body, does not belong to him. Who does it belong to? They belong to each other.
Exactly.
I don't like that. Well, then continue to go to Moore and the likes of Mr. Moore, and you will hear what you want to hear, because at the end of the day, they are human bots telling you what you want to hear because you refuse to go to the Bible to hear what God is telling you. Pay attention to
That's
this.
a good way of putting it. Folks, that's what we have for you on this edition of Irrespective. By the way, we'd like to let the audience know that we're going to take up this issue on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's been some rumblings and grumblings and complaints and accusations launched, bandied about in social media about people Christians, whom are saying America first, America only. I don't want to get deep into the weeds here now that we're ending this episode, but in the last couple of days, there's been an awful lot of discussion over what is happening to make America great again. And the Christians that subscribe to that idea, whom are being, in essence, called anti-gospel. And the things that Trump has been saying and how he's been backing off of his campaign promises and putting American interests, as it were, on the back burner. And now people are saying, well, since MAGA seems to be being killed by Trump and his backpedaling on these issues, we need a thing called America First, America Only. And a lot of Christians are saying, I like that idea. We need to start looking out for our own interests. Oh, well, the sanctimonious among us are going around saying that that thing is inherently anti-gospel because Jesus somehow, somewhere said somewhere in 3 Thessalonians 16:21 that America, a nation, more specifically, can't look out for its own interests first and foremost, and has to put the interests of other nations either on equal footing or their own interests subservient to the nation's, a foreign nation, somehow because it's gospel or something or other. That's, I guess, the argument that they're making.
It's under Put Your Nation Last.
Right.
It's under that chapter where you also find the constipated
who was liberated by Christ over his constipation.
And he pooped immediately.
Exactly, immediately. And by the way, some people say that it was a large deposit. Anyways, we're going to take up this issue on Wednesday because these are the things that these people whom are influencers and others say, that when you call them to the carpet, where does it say this?
Put your nation last.
Then they have no answer. They immediately appeal to ad hominems and things because they don't have an argument. But that's not the point, folks. The point is they want to make you think that their position, even though it's inherently anti-biblical, anti-Christian, anti-gospel, they want to make you think that their position, as a matter of fact, is Christian. So we're going to cover this on Wednesday.
The subtitle is Leave Your Nation, Come to This Nation, and Then Put It Last. Even though you left your nation to come to this nation to put it last.
There you go. That's what we'll have for you on Wednesday
That's
at 8.
Subversive mentality there. I'm just saying.
It is.
Thinking out loud.
Is America First, America Only, anti-gospel? You'll want to watch on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern
We will be
Standard
talking
Time.
to people about this, and they will be talking to us. It'll be conversational, and then we'll let you know what the conversation is all about.
Exactly. For those of you that might be joining us for the first time and have not yet subscribed, please do so, irrespective of where you're watching this. Pun intended. X, YouTube, Rumble, subscribe. Click on the notification bell if you're on YouTube or Rumble, and also give us the thumbs up whether you're on X, Rumble, or YouTube. Also, donate. It helps us to continue to put out this content for your edification. There's a QR code in the upper left corner of the screen. Scan it. Conversely, you can click on the link that is beneath the video player in the video description. And last but not least, do not forget to follow us on X. Our username is @Irrespective77. That's all the time we have left for this edition. We hope that you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. For my father, Jesus, this has been Gio. Until the next occasion that we gather, may the Lord shine his face upon you.